audience of members. Roughly half are operators, ISPs, all walks of life, from mobile to satellite. Also, you can see a lot of enterprise, players in here, organizations such as Marriott Hotels, Home Depot, Walmart. And then what else do we have? Chipsets, equipment manufacturers, device manufacturers, OS vendors as well, okay? And we're pleased to say that BIF and all the people here on the stage are members as well, so thank you for your support. I just want to say a few words about some of the technical thematics that run through the WBA. So part of the work that we do, we have a very heavy work program, developing things such as standards, best practices, guidelines, all centered around Wi-Fi. So there are several different work group areas. The first group is the 5G, 6G. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of work focused on Wi-Fi and how it can be more convergent with 5G, in the future 6G, and also private 5G. Wi-Fi and IoT as well. So for things such as smart home applications, but also industrial IoT, technologies such as Wi-Fi sensing and Wi-Fi Halo are also part of our program. Okay. And then obviously NGH, a lot of work being done with 6 gigahertz, Wi-Fi 7. In the second half of the year, we're almost there, we'll be focusing on Wi-Fi 8. And then, I think just to sort of share, we have 2 work groups focused around roaming and open roaming. So, a bit of background, but the WBA was created back in 2003. And originally back then, the operators, the mobile operators, the AT&Ts, the BSNLs of the world, were very keen in how to extend their Wi-Fi coverage to each other. So we set about developing those standards, and today it's culminated in open roaming, and we're going to talk more about that in a moment. I think just a sort of brief, well, Wi-Fi officially I think is 1999, so it's 26 years this year. And I'm just tracking, I came into Wi-Fi in 2003. Very much the world of username, password, captive portals. 10 years later, we saw that evolution. Things such as SIM authentication and operators leveraging Wi-Fi networks, AT&T being one of the pioneers in that respect, leveraging Passpoint for discovery of networks and then automated connections. And then in the last 5 years, we have open roaming. So how we can actually expand that roaming ecosystem out to more organizations, not just operators, but enterprises, public sector. And we're going to talk a bit about that in the context of PM1 later as well. So open roaming, it's a technology standard. We're going to get into the weeds a little bit, so I won't say too much now. But it's a federated wireless ecosystem. So if I'm a hotel, if I'm a hospital, if I'm an operator, if I'm a government, a city, I can participate. If I'm an equipment vendor, a device vendor, a traditional operator, I can participate. And the idea is that we can all follow one standard globally in order to interconnect seamlessly onto Wi-Fi networks and roam seamlessly, and make sure that's done in a secure fashion as possible, and also make sure that people's data is kept private. I'll touch on some of the business benefits. We're going to ask some questions of the panel about this in a moment. I think the traditional benefits has been around for managed services providers, but okay, if I'm selling into a hotel like this, what else can I do to actually make that guest experience better in terms of coming in, connecting seamlessly? Myself, for example, I've traveled in from London yesterday morning. I've been on, I guess, a 12-hour journey. I just want to come in and connect. I have a relationship with Lali. They know my identity. They can just connect me. And I can roam all around the hotel and any other hotspots outside. That's the goal. Okay. Offloading. Obviously, we see a lot of that globally, particularly in the United States. AT&T is a pioneer in that respect. And then roaming. Not just onto terrestrial networks, but onto things like in-flight connectivity and also, maritime and trains and public transportation. This is just a screenshot of a crowd-sourced map that we have that shows you some of those open roaming hotspots. So I would say we're sort of, partway through the life cycle as far as open roaming adoption is concerned in terms of locations enabled. We suspect there are 7 million hotspots out there. We can note it's like 3,000 typical venues. A lot of that penetration has been in the United States and North America, in Europe, certain parts of Asia as well. And I'm going to share some of the examples. So we see a lot of traction in healthcare. So I believe in the United States, it's probably the sort of, out of the top 10 healthcare providers, at least 3 have adopted open roaming. Several universities globally, so in the UK, where I'm from, Loughborough University is a big sporting university, has adopted open roaming. We've seen it in public sector, so City of London, Westminster, is quite far down the road in terms of their open roaming story. They have rolled out 300 hotspots, and they're into their second phase. I'll talk a bit about Japan, because it seems a bit of a hotbed as far as open roaming is concerned. So Tokyo led the way originally, but it's now spread to 3 other cities, including Kyoto and Osaka. We've seen it rolled out in Tokyo Metropolitan Government. We're working very closely with the Tokyo Metropolitan Government on the next phase of their launch as well. Okay. Recently, I think in Europe, Ahold Delhaize is a very large supermarket chain across the Benelux region. Safeway, you probably recognize that brand. Simon Malls, I was in the US a couple of weeks ago, was fortunate enough in Dallas to visit one of these malls, and it's where open roaming is being rolled out gradually as well. But I think, as you can see, sort of the sectors of verticals are quite broad. Okay. So let's move back to the panel. So we're here to celebrate Wi-Fi, 26 years of Wi-Fi, and its birthday this year. I'm going to ask the panelists, if we don't mind, first off, just to give a brief introduction of themselves, their organization, and what they do. And we'll start with Miss Alka Selot Asthana. So, please.
Good afternoon, everybody, and good to be part of the panel here. Thank you so much. And this is, can you hear? Okay, thank you. So I just said, great to be part of this panel, and thank you for that. I just wanted to, first introduce myself. I represent Tata Communications Limited. Tatacom is a Comtech player, and we are global. We are present in more than 195 plus countries. We run the submarine cable across the globe, largest owner of independent submarine cables, actually. 30% of the world data travels through this network. We also provide, as a part of our platform services and as a fabric, services for media-enabled, things like the Formula F1 being transmitted. We also provide IoT and M2M solutions. Of course, Wi-Fi is an important part of it. CNPN is also something which we provide as a service across the globe. Of course, not in India, because that's not the kind of regulations Indian system allows. And a whole host of cloud-based services and AI. When we talk about AI and its entry into all aspects of telecom, I think Wi-Fi will gain a huge lot from the advent of the whole data analytics and how to make best use of the connectivity which is available. When we are talking about ubiquitous Wi-Fi, I wanted to take an example. I see, first of all, this panel just after lunch is pretty tough. I know people have had a great lunch, and then it's difficult to attract attention. But I was also noticing a few people eating kulfis. Now, that's something which I really adore, but I can't eat because of 2 reasons. 1, I have given up on sugar, and 2, I'm sitting on a panel, so I can't have kulfi. And I think that is representative of what happens with Wi-Fi. As you travel across, you will see a lot of Wi-Fi connectivity available, right? You will, if you go on your phones, you will have a list of Wi-Fi APNs being visible, but you cannot access them because you are not identified by that network. When we talk about ubiquitous Wi-Fi, it will have to get into a regulatory framework where that whole OTP thing or any other, identification happens on the back end and not really by the customer. If we can flip that, then Wi-Fi becomes absolutely ubiquitous. And I think, we need to urge DOT and WPC as well to figure out what is the best way to make use of this immense but very scattered set of resources. Tatacom does business-to-business connectivity, B2B. So we are not into making use of the retail customer set and their inputs and requirements. But for the B2B, we would really like to be seeing a big evolution in Indian ecosystem, Indian regulatory mechanism, so that there is a separate set of regulations just targeting business and their requirements. That's not happening today because of several reasons. I mean, normally the numbers, and as the minister himself said, the numbers of the populace is the one which is to be catered to, and fairly so. But the business and the enterprises are also part of, a consumer segment. We need specific attention for that segment. Wi-Fi in every enterprise's perspective is a big way to make the entire network, their private network or captive network, extremely seamless. We need to progress into the Industry 4.0 mindset, and that requires a lot of regulatory enablement and technical enablement too. So I'm waiting and actively participating in all these discussions where we can push the envelope towards that side. Thank you.
Thank you, Alka. So, yeah, you're right. We are here to lift everybody's spirits after lunch. I also missed the coffee today, but not last night. So I think my takeaway is that we have to put the pistachio into the Wi-Fi. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Jayant, would you mind just introducing yourself briefly and what you do at Selot? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. And as after lunch, everybody knows this is a little bit hard time to stay well connected with the presentation. Well, this presentation for me is after lunch presentation, and it's for the open roaming. Well, I'm from CDOT, and as you know, in CDOT and the DOT, we have almost the similar type of framework we have prepared, that is the PM Vani framework. Open roaming is a very well standard international framework where it will give the convenience to easily provide the ubiquitous connectivity among the operators. You can move around and you can seamlessly able to connect it. Where this thing is that in CDOT and DOT, we have prepared the one framework which is prepared by which is recommended by the TRAI, that will give almost the similar type of network facility, but PM1 is primarily for the rollout of public hotspot in the pan-India, which will give the convenience to create a Wi-Fi network, which will give the convenience to create a public Wi-Fi network, and this will create the easy to access the public network. But yes, there's a few challenges are there, and because of that, from 2021 to 2025, it has not seen such a revolutionary network availability and all these things. And yes, this PM1 framework is totally for the by the participation of the small and medium entrepreneur. This open roaming is a very well standard framework, which has been very well-defined standard, pass point certification and all these things. But there is some challenge with respect to our country where the government is thinking of participation of the more small entrepreneur, medium entrepreneur, and the small kirana shop and all the local shopping centers, and they all start become the internet service provider over the Wi-Fi. So That is the one important thing where the PM Vani is very much relevant for the country like India. And in the for the open roaming standard, definitely there is a standard is there, some certification is there, there is some equipment specific dependencies are there, like the pass point certified equipment is required, which is only able to provide this open roaming connectivity. Again, the big players like the big telecom players, the big telecom operator or big internet service provider, they need to have one agreement to provide these type of connectivity, seamless connectivity and all these things. So I personally think that yes, in the open roaming, whatever the automatic connectivity and secure connectivity, that option is available. In case of PM Vani, regarding the before the security and all, the customer identification is very important in the country like India, where the more than 130 crore population is there, where the identity of the person is required. And here, you know, the KYC is very important. The PM Vani framework specially provide the framework which first do the KYC of the user, and this KYC will be from the mobile KYC. Similarly, this PM Vani framework, as recommended by the TRAI, it is very easy to deploy. In case of open roaming, of course, we need only the big telecom operator with the proper framework and proper standards and all, they can able to deploy it. But here the PM Vani framework is only for the small player and medium player with only some standard stack and all these things which has been well defined in the TRI framework, that is the token handler modules are there. With that, anybody can able to deploy the network, run the network, and give the services to the common man. Onboarding, yes, in the open roaming onboarding is quite easy, that because once the among the operator the agreement is there, any any user of the any particular service provider come to the partner service provider's network, he can easily able to get authenticated and start getting the services. In case of PM Vani, definitely there is an app-based KYC, and after the authentication of the user, he has to search the network, and that is again through the app. In the first, before lunch session, there was a discussion on the PM Vani regarding why it is not taking up. Yes, this because of the app and because of the every time you need to search the network, every time you need to pay the network for the particular service provider or particular PDOA. Because the existing PM Vani don't have the complete roaming facility that any from one PDO to another PDO you can use the network. That facility is not there. Of course, DOT is now discussing about how to make it more flexible, the roaming and all these things. They are also planning to it. Maybe after bringing the roaming and all these things in the PM Vani, then maybe it will almost at par with the open roaming standard of with the global standard. So with this, I am closing this session and closing my lecture. Open roaming and PM Vani. PM Vani will definitely going to complement the open roaming in future once the standard will be more lucrative and more defined and all. So thank you.
Thank you. Also, I'll put the question to you in terms of open roaming, but what are the long-term implications of open roaming on the Wi-Fi industry? You can use my mic, or it's up to you. Okay, sure. Yep.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you, BIF, for inviting HP Aruba Networking to be part of this event, this grand event, right? And I will not take much time, as if that I was having sixth sense that time is going to be a constraint here, so I only have one slide. Can you go to the next slide? But I have done some very complex animations on this slide, so it will come one by one. Okay. So first thing about HP Aruba Networking, I don't know how many of you know about HP Aruba Networking or Aruba as a company. So like earlier Steve mentioned, Wi-Fi has been there for 25 plus years. So Aruba is also associated with Wi-Fi for almost 23 years, 24 years now, right? So somewhere in the early 2000s when devices were getting Wi-Fi card or laptops in government, I used to work in HCL Noida and I used to visit a lot of government places where we were adding PCMCIA card to government desktops. So primarily at that time, one of the key challenges was security. So Aruba was one of the companies started Wi-Fi along with a secured Wi-Fi. So even today, our one of the mottos is secured AI-powered networking, right? Then Aruba was acquired by HPE in 2015. So along with Wi-Fi, we got the complete portfolio of HPE. Right? Today we offer Edgecore services, all the portfolio. So if I take a quick tiers of what we provide, one is connectivity, of course. Connectivity is where the user connects. So Wi-Fi, what we are talking today, that we have been there. Along with that, we are providing connectivity on wired networking, data center networking. Then, like I mentioned earlier, protect. So any connectivity has to be protected, so we provide the framework for that. Then automate. Earlier, it used to be more of managing the network. Now it is more about how you leverage AI to manage the network. So that is where the automate comes in. And finally, how consumers can take Aruba solutions, that is where adapt comes in. They can buy as a capex or they can buy as a service. That is again, like we are talking about PM Vani earlier in the morning. Primarily, one of the challenges those providers are facing is how can they invest so much and then generate revenue. With as a service models, we can actually provide those kind of solutions. Then coming to roaming, roaming is the topic here, primarily open roaming. So before open roaming, in 2020, it has become part of the broadband alliance. Then at that time, like earlier mentioned, mobile providers or service providers used to or wanted to offload the cellular network onto Wi-Fi. At that time, Aruba released something called Aruba AirPass technology based on Wi-Fi Alliance's Passpoint technology. So primarily what it means is when you are having, for example, if I take the example here, you are coming out from the road to this hotel, maybe when you come inside, you don't get Airtel signal that much. So automatically you hook on to the Wi-Fi inside and based on the SIM authentication which was done by Airtel, right? That was something Passpoint used to do. Even what we have done with open roaming or what the Broadband Forum has done with open roaming is added that capabilities along with a lot of identity providers. So what Aruba is now, Aruba is one of the certified open roaming providers, right? And then advantage of open roaming is not just with only telcos. Now, earlier, sir mentioned, like some of those PM Vani operators, they may not be, every Kirana store may not be able to be part of open roaming, but of course there can be a hub, maybe in a town you can have a hub, that hub can be part of open roaming, right? So that you can still scale the open roaming framework. And Aruba is happy to be part of this in discussion, along with eminent panel here. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Yeah, I can also, I mentioned earlier in London, but also in Japan, in various cities. What I see sort of happening next is that CSPs, those organizations that have been given funding to roll out fiber, but also build Wi-Fi networks and become ISPs, they seem to have an interest in open roaming themselves as a value add. So particularly in the UK, where there are lots of rural communities, where perhaps the sort of ROI for a large operator like a BT isn't there, they're given funding to roll out fiber. But then also, what can they do? Because we're talking about, hairdressers, butchers, houses, that sort of thing that have built their own Wi-Fi community. So there might only be 50 households in that village, but they're all sharing each other's Wi-Fi. Okay. So back to the panel. I want to ask Vishal a question. First, introduce yourselves, what you do at Edgecore. Also, how Edgecore is participating in open roaming, and then I think more of a sort of technical question about how the authorization is done over an open roaming network as well. So, Vishal, feel free to take the podium.
I'd like to use this mic, actually. First of all, thanks to Kumar and the eminent panelists for keeping this session alive. After the lunch, yes, it is very difficult. Yes, and the kulfi idea, ma'am, I really liked, though I can enjoy, still I can enjoy that. And thanks to the BIF team and all the organizers for arranging this great event. I'm part of the business. I'm leading the business development team here in India for Edgecore. So in Edgecore, what we do, so here the today's word is open roaming. in Edgecore, we are one of the prominent player in open networking. So open networking and open roaming, I mean, looks similar. In open roaming, it provides a flexibility or a seamless connectivity along with that ubiquitous connectivity, I would say. In open networking, we provide a flexibility to these service providers, to the users basically. So in Edgecore, we do supply, or we are one of the manufacturers. I join one of my colleagues, I mean HP here, who is also the OEM. We are the OEM for all these devices, which includes the Wi-Fi access points, the networking switches, which are basically the backbone of the entire network required to provide this connectivity. At Edgecore, we are also part of the Wi-Fi wireless broadband alliance. Happy to contribute in the open roaming framework as well. So a brief introduction about me. Coming to the question, Steve, you asked. First of all, I'd like to explain how exactly the concept works, the authentication basically. So a device is there. First of all, the IDP is basically, the ID is provided, the identity is provided by the mobile operators or the mobile device manufacturers or so on. I mean, there are multiple IDPs who are part of this framework, they provide the ID. Then that device basically goes into a network, it searches, it automatically scans the entire network, it finds that, okay, there is one SSID is there, which is connected, which is available with the open roaming session. Then it tries to connect. So there is a unique concept basically, like in normal Wi-Fi, what we do is use the ID and password, the user ID and password, which is not required. In the open roaming, this is one of the beauty that with the passpoint technology, hotspot 2.0, which we call that, with that, it establishes, it tries to connect it. Then the EAP session, EAP session is basically created on 802.1x. It may be a little technical, but yes, it is, since the authentication is required, it goes on the 802.1x. Then the authentication goes to the IDPs, the ID providers basically, and then they approve it. So entire this thing is like ubiquitous, rather seamless. There is no manual intervention which is required, like ID, user ID and password, scanning the network. It is not required. In normal Wi-Fi, we generally we scan the SSIDs, but here scanning is also not required. It automatically fetches the SSID and then connects it. One of the most important part is the entire security. So now the recent, I mean, all the secure protocols like WPA3 Enterprise, the recent one which we use, which is being used by these devices, these are basically, this encrypts entire data. So entire data is getting encrypted, and that makes it secure. So this entire process is followed while you move from one hotspot to another hotspot seamlessly. So that's the reason basically we call it as a open roaming, because it does not require manual intervention. Once you move from one hotspot to another hotspot, it automatically connects. It is exactly similar to what we do in mobile handset, the mobile network. So that's what it makes like easy, ubiquitous, and seamless. It is basically similar to mobile network. The Wi-Fi is also being connected, I mean getting connected to the different networks. I hope I was able to answer the questions.
I'll stay with you, Vishal, because there's a follow-on question to that, because you talked about it being open. And I want to ask you about the interoperability and how it's vendor agnostic. So this is coming from a position where I guess Edgecore are a pioneer as far as open roaming is concerned. On our website, you can see all of the approved vendors, and there are a lot there. But how does that interoperability and level of vendor agnostic level, how does that work?
Yeah, that's really very important, because Edgecore cannot be there everywhere. I believe HP, I believe all the OEMs, they will always be there, and they need to be part of this ecosystem. So the vendor agnostic environment is certainly required. And since this entire framework of open roaming, it's actually based on the industry standards. if I talk about the standards like EAP 802.1x, that's a industry standard for the authentication that is followed by, I mean, that is basically supported by all the OEMs, including us. We do support all these industry standards, including other OEMs also, I would say. Along with that, the one of the another standard is Passpoint Hotspot 2.0. That is basically to raise a request and connect it automatically. So that is also industry standard, which is also again followed by all the OEMs, and then the I mean that's how it makes a sorry common standards. So these all standards which are basically required to be followed by the OEMs, and I'm happy that all the service providers, they basically ask that, okay, these devices, all the devices should comply with these standards, and that's how the vendor agnostic ecosystem can be created. So once, if I have one hotspot which is available, let's say suppose in this hotel, and the another place, let's say if you go outside and some other hotel or some other hotspot, if that is by other OEM, the same standards are followed. Because of those standards only, the open roaming also becomes very seamless. So that's how probably, I mean, this answers your question, that the vendor agnostic ecosystem is created because of these standards only.
No, I think that's important. As Vishal's saying, there's no one vendor that rules the world. So we all have to collaborate, we all have to find a way, but we have to think about the user end experience as well. Okay. Alka, I'd like to ask you about a question about, I guess, in terms of your own, or Tata's product, TCL's product roadmap for open roaming. What are the plans? Have you deployed it? Do you plan to deploy it? Anything you can share?
So as I was mentioning earlier, Tata works in the space of enterprise connectivity, business to business, and yes, they would definitely like to have internal roaming. So when we talk of the network, we want to set up the private and the captive networks, and the seamlessness will happen through, through the open networking piece. Today, it's not so, obviously. When we talk about, so it's not a product roadmap specifically, it is more of a solution roadmap which we are looking at, and that depends on the needs of and the development of standards, the needs of the enterprises and the development of standards. But honestly, if we are talking about the rural ecosystem, where the PM Vani is going to, as the minister said, drive a lot of entrepreneurship, it again cannot be limited to the backhaul being provided by one, or the Wi-Fi being provided by somebody else, and third, the nascent technology being specified in this whole ecosystem, because a large part of this target group is very, very price sensitive. It cannot pay the price of the open networking, if I may call it that, because that's the next evolution. And in the initial phases, it will require a lot of capex. The return on investment is not going to drive that adoption that easily, and therefore we will have to think of ways, including the Digital Bharat Nidhi fund for driving this in the first place, having it set up, utilizing all kinds of backhauls which are available today and which can be thought of. So if there is a microwave backhaul which is available as a frequency spot, let us think of the ISPs also getting that microwave backhaul spot, so that they can create a better network, building it backwards, right? So this whole distinction between front haul, back haul, the AP who is giving and the backhaul who is giving, and all of that needs to kind of break down into which geography is being covered by whom best, right? So including the BharatNet, for instance, there's a lot of emphasis from the government side to utilize the BharatNet for making these individual panchayats as entrepreneurship hubs. so the connectivity, bringing it back to, let's say, the internet has to be, patched up totally. And that today is a gap. We look forward to getting into a, ubiquitous mode sometime soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think now it's time to see if the audience has had too much coffee. Open up to questions in the audience. So any questions from the audience? Okay, can we get a mic, or you can take mine, I think.
Sir, I'm Dr. Jagdish Shivhare, professor and ex-scientist ISRO. Sir, my question, how to ensure that my Wi-Fi is secure, and how I can check that what type of Wi-Fi security I'm using?
Okay. I can, or Vishal, would you like to have a stab at it?
Sorry.
There's another session after this, no? On
Okay, so I'll just...
So can we keep the question for the next session, if you don't mind, sir? Okay, thank you.
That's okay, otherwise if I
Yeah,
may
that's okay. Yeah, you can take it.
If I may
yeah.
answer, I just... Yeah, just about design. So I just mentioned in the security part, basically. So there is a standard which we call WPA3 Enterprise. It actually is an extension of WPA2. So that security protocol, the security protocols which is a standard, that is followed, and this is most secure protocol which is available in the industry.
And I think overlaid with that, there's encryption. So open roaming uses PKI, public keying infrastructure. So no open networks, no pre-shared keys. Nothing is shared in the open. So that's a critical part of open roaming in terms of the security standards as well. Okay. I think we're up on time. Thank you, audience, for coming back from lunch. And open to questions out in the breaks and the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have a round of applause for that wonderful session. I would request our session chair, Mr. Steve, to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of appreciation to our eminent panelist, to Ms. Alka, Asthana, Vice President and Head Regulatory, TCL. Thank you, ma'am, for all those valuable inputs. To Mr. Jayant Mandal, Group Leader, CDOT. Thank you, sir. To Mr. Mahesh Kumar Ji, Head System Engineering, HPE. And to Mr. Vishal Jain, Edgecore Networks. Thank you, sir. May I once again invite Brigadier Anil Tandon, he's here, to kindly come up and do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude to our chair, Mr. Steve Namaseevayum, Wireless Broadband Alliance. Thank you, sir. And a quick group photograph before we move on to the next session. So ladies and gentlemen, the session that is coming up is technical session 2.